Hi, ladies. Welcome to another episode of the Femalepreneur Coach podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Barr, and I'm so excited for today's episode to be joined by such an incredible, fierce powerhouse, Strategist, who is a woman that I just have so much respect and admiration for. I was just saying inside my Facebook group, because you're like the next generation coming up for me, and it just gives me so much hope for all of my daughters that are obviously younger than you as well. So firstly, thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you so much for having me. I feel the feeling is very mutual. I mean, obviously, I am younger than you, so you're not the next generation coming up. But yeah, I'm really grateful to be here and to learn from you and be in this space. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. So you are essentially an inner power activation leader for women. And I just wanted to read out your Instagram bio because it always gives me chills when I read it. So you essentially, we always talk about the big audacious promises and goals on this podcast, because obviously a lot of my audience are female entrepreneurs. And your big promise is about activating women who are eager for radical self-evolution by igniting your inner wildfire, which I just absolutely am obsessed with, forging indestructible embodiment and fierce self-love. I mean, literally gives me chills just reading it. And I love your page anyway. It's so beautiful. So if anybody is not yet following Sharice, you absolutely need to, and I'll make sure that all of her details are in the show notes. But just wow, thank you so much for being here and just, shining your light. I'm sure that you'll be giving the women so much incredible value in this session.
Yeah, thank you. No, thank you so much. And I think I mean, everything I kind of do is about, giving ourselves the permission to do and be that. I feel like growing up, I was always deemed as being that person that was, the rebellious one, or not even rebellious, actually, that's probably the wrong word. I would say people would call me the aggressive one, or the one that was like tenacious in what she wanted, and actually I always had audacious goals in my life, like especially wanting to be a dancer from like a low income household, in only person of color in my year group at school, like lots of little things like that added to this reason why I had this burning desire and passion to do and be more. And everything I do is obviously linked to astrology, so being a double Leo, sun and rising, that passion and fiery energy is in every cell of my being. So that's why it's in my description for, what I do, because it is about igniting the fire in everyone that I speak to and connect with. Because I feel like, even if we have like a little flicker of a candle or a burning wildfire, a flame inside of us, it's there. And it's about allowing ourselves and giving ourselves the permission to shine fully in that and to glow and burn bright and boldly. And I think, no matter how that looks for you, whether it means, like I said, that candle's just on all the time, or you are just a wildfire in the wilderness, either way, it's about you allowing and accepting yourself, because that's been my journey.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, because also it's equally with that wildfire. Like I've absolutely gone through phases of life where that can almost be quite toxic, when it's like there's so much inside of me in terms of like sense of, injustice and push energy rather than attracting, that we were just talking about a moment ago actually. And it's almost like finding that middle ground where it's like you get to turn it up and turn it down when you want to. You're not at the mercy of your emotions and all of this kind of self-destructive behavior. So why do you think that women kind of struggle with that balance, like either dimming their light or just having it to the place of just burn everything, like fuck everybody, burn everything down? Like why do you think we struggle to find that middle ground?
I think it's because, now I'm not going to shame men here, and so I want to make that very clear, because I think the way that I will word this might be offensive to some people. It's not that at all. So, I'm just saying that as a disclaimer. But it's because the society that we live in and that we've all grown up in, I would say since probably the early 1900s, is patriarchy. So we've lived in this environment where men thrive, men can just be who they are and live in that environment, and that process of being constant action takers, doing the thing, getting it done. And as women, we have watched that format, and we've seen that that's how success and what it looks like to us. So by nature and by the law of us watching and responding, we then think that that's the way we have to do it too. And also, I think because of that patriarchal energy, women were then seen as less than or inferior, or, you know, that you weren't capable of doing that thing. So then we've wanted to rebel, and that's what sparked that passion and that fire and that drive and that need to take action and do and be. And I say be in that toxic sense of like, we have to do what they're doing because that's what works. But actually, you know, that in itself was the complete wrong way of us doing it. You know, I don't know if anyone's read Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, but we have a very different makeup energetically as well as physically, you know. So I think that energy thing I'm talking about isn't gendered, by the way. You know, like we can all have either or inside of us, but as a female born female, naturally your body and your soul wants to be and receive. Masculine energy is all about giving and doing. So I think what happens is, because that's the way it's always been done, we think that that's the way we had to do it, so we did. And then because it didn't work that way, or because we thought that we had to do or take action, some of us then repressed because we thought, well, I can't do that, that's not in my nature, so I'm not going to do that, so then I'm going to pull right back. So there was a real clear polarity of what happened in that process of watching patriarchy, is that some of us thought, right, I'm going to join that trail, then I'm going to keep pushing forward, I'm going to create my own pathway. And then some people thought, I'm tapping out of the journey completely, I'll just make myself small. So I think that's what's happened in that. But the feminine energy is all about the being. So there is a middle ground here where we just show up as we are. We embrace our nurturing tendencies, our empathy, our compassion, which is so natural, that flows through us. You know, women are like water, you know, it's menstrual cycles, all of these things that we have, even, you know, like for, you know, when it comes to like reproducing, all of those things, it's water. Women are water, we flow, we receive. And I think for men, it's all about the giving. And that's a massive part of being in your divine feminine, is being able to receive. And I think a lot of us haven't allowed ourselves to receive, whether it's because we were constantly doing or we were just pulling away. So, you know, this middle space is about how we open up, let in and let out.
So true as well. I find that even as a money mindset coach, and I use that term really loosely because it just doesn't sound enough. It doesn't really encompass everything that I do, but just the inability for women to receive is essentially what blocks you from actually receiving what you want. But absolutely, I'd love to echo everything you just said around that. We looked at men and thought that they were essentially blazing our own trails as to what success looks like. And that for me came up so many times when I worked in corporate, where you would get the two halves. You get the only women that were kind of doing really well at exec levels either didn't have kids, really in their masculine, very toxic, real like boss bitches, like cutthroat. And then you'd get the nice ones that were like only ever rising to a certain level because, you know, they've got kids and all of these just like really inferior labels that they've given themselves, which meant that they believed that they then couldn't be successful because they wouldn't want to have to compromise or sacrifice for that. And it's like, if you were a good person, you only got to this level in business, and then if you were a bitch, you were going to get to this level. And yeah, I certainly looked around and thought, wow, I don't want to be any of these people. And I think that's what really pushed me into the path of entrepreneurship. So one thing I love, so first of all, I'd love actually to kind of understand like your connection to this work and what's really, you know, compelled you to come forwards as a leader for women. You know, if you wouldn't mind kind of speaking on that. And then what I love as well is that we've got so much alignment when it comes to manifestation, because obviously that's essentially the end result of the work that you do, is that the women are then able to create their dream life, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. You might have to stop me because I'll roll on forever. But yeah, I guess for me, it all really does stem down to my childhood and my upbringing, as to what inspired me and why it inspired me to do and take this work. And I think really I've always been a leader because I've had to be. And you know, I grew up in a low-income household with an alcoholic parent, and so one alcoholic parent and one avoidant parent. And the avoidant parent was because she had to work so hard, you know, be the breadwinner, all of those things, which meant they weren't present in the household, which meant love was always available in my house. It just looked very different. And then I felt like I had to perform to receive it. And that's where I kind of got this good girl mentality, or kind of drive to push to be more, because I didn't want to live in that same reality. So it was almost those experiences that inspired me to be like, nah, this ain't my life. I'm not doing this. I'm breaking the cycle here. But then that pushed me in quite a toxic sense. So I always tell people that I lived in toxic masculinity. So this fourth thing that I'm talking about, the patriarchy, I lived it. So when I'm talking from pure experience. So there was always a drive to do and be more because no one believed in me. You know, I trained as a professional dancer, and that was always my long-term dream, that I wanted to be a dancer. No one believed in me. And I think, you know, my race came into play in that, my body shape, being curvy, being short, you know, all of these things were limitations that I felt like were burdens at the time. Now I embraced every part of me, but you know, I then also my sibling is really slim, so like she was always deemed as the skinny one. I was then by default the fat one. So there was all these little things that were coming in my way, to like obstacles basically that I had to overcome. And in my true toxic sense of how I was as a person, I've just bouldered through all of it. And I was just I guess this is where the toxic trailblazing comes in, because I just burnt everything that was in my pathway to get me to where I needed to be. And that, you know, whether that was having heated conversations with people, whether that wasn't taking no and just forcing doors that were shut in my face. Like, I forced open these doors so many times, and often they led to the wrong room because I wasn't supposed to be there. So it was just exhausting, you know, like this toxic masculine way of being, doing everything, all of the things that, you know, because it was my ego. And that's what I say with dance particularly, is that me trying to pursue that was for validation of others and leading through my ego, whereas my soul was really connected to the teaching work I was doing, working with people. Also, I've always been a really good friend, you know, like just had lots of friends in lots of different groups, and how I show up in those environments and the advice that I would give. You know, everyone always says that I'm an old soul. But then I think it's the how do you say it, parentalization, when you had to be a parent when you were a child. I think that's definitely what stems in. So this is all fed in. And I had 11 members of my family die between the ages of 12 and 17. So that obviously fed into like my understanding of life, and, you know, knowing that I wanted to achieve something more for myself. So it weighs up, you know, the polarity of the toxic energy mixed with the drive and determination to help me get to where I wanted to be. So then
I wonder, sorry, just touching on that, like so much of
yeah,
your story literally resonates with me so much. And every conversation that we have is always like another aha moment for me, because I see so much of my own journey in you. And I'm sure that there'll be other women that do, that maybe they haven't had the extent of trauma that you've experienced, but even just the way that you've dealt with it is always like, oh yeah, I was even thinking about something that you said the other day, and it just connected a few dots for me about how if I am not more conscientious, I could be repeating cycles, even though they would look very different. It would still be ultimately the end goal. So that was quite interesting for me. But also, do you think, like I do, part of my story is obviously that my mum died very suddenly, and again, a lot of death in my family, and just alienation from other family members has given me such an acute awareness of time, and that really I'm
100%.
just not here to fuck about. Like that
Absolutely.
it's just given me such an appreciation for life. Do you think that at that formative age as well is what's driven you too?
Yeah, to a T. And I think I am mega spiritual, and I had like a medium reading, and my nan and my dad came through, who died within that time frame, and they both said that, you know, they felt they didn't get to live life to the fullest. And I think that's really stuck with me. Like, I had that reading probably when I was about 16, and I was like, oh well, actually it would have been later than that, because my dad passed away when I was 17, so it would have been maybe early 20s, maybe 21. And then at that point I was like, okay, but I feel like along that process, just people dying was enough for me to be like, I need to achieve what I came here to do. Because, and especially seeing how everyone else in my family was in terms of like their own, you know, ways of being and the way they lived. Conformity, I would say, like the conformity has never sat well with me. I've never fit into a box or fit into society's expectation, whether that be in looks or personality. I was always seen as, like I said, aggressive, or, you know, hard work, or strong, like super strong. in a toxic way. And I think, yeah, I just, yeah, like you said, I didn't come here to mess around. I knew what I wanted to be someone. And I think I've always had that energy inside of me, even from a young girl. I always knew that I was meant to be on stage. So, you know, whether that, when I was a child, I used to be really into singing. And I mean, I still do sing now, but obviously that's not my career goal. But at the time, it was to be a performer. So I even wanted to be a singer, then I wanted to be a dancer. Now, obviously, that takes place as in being on stage and delivering talks. But ultimately, I knew that I was always going to be someone. And I think that started with me giving myself the permission to be someone. And I think what the transition happened for me was coming out of dance, realizing that dance was almost like an ego suit, like something externally outside of me that I could step into and be, and then step away from it, and almost that the rest of my life was crumbling, you know. So like the performer me was bright and confident and bold, whereas the inner me was the wounded child still. So the real work for me had been like when I realized I didn't have to be the performer anymore, and I could just be full. And it started with doing that inner work that kind of led me to this platform, really.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's like your personality becomes a trauma response. And I was definitely that person where it's like I actually thrived in chaos. And I would always be the person that you'd need in a chaotic situation, because I'm just like,
Same.
what actually needs to get done, like let's just get it done. And even now I find it a little bit it's so interesting, but like my last partner, like he was such a faffer, such a panicker. Like the kids would get sick, and I remember my son like literally nearly bit his tongue off. I'm laughing, it was quite stressful. When I look back on reflection, I was like, I think I need to do some work, because like literally he was like 9 months crawling, like trying to pulled the chair over onto his face, bless him, nearly bit his tongue off. And my partner was like, oh my God, let's get an ambulance, like let's do all the things. And I was like, no, he just needs me, like we'll be fine, let me just sit, feed him. And you know, and it was absolutely fine. But then after like 2 days later, I was like, I think I might actually need to take him to the hospital, because like it's not healing, and I don't know if this is any good. But I just remember afterwards thinking, they were like, oh my God, you must have been like so frantic and and I was like, no, is that okay, like is that normal? I was just so focused on like, I need to like read the situation. He's okay, so I need to be okay, because he won't be okay, like i.e. the baby. And it was like just emotionally void. It's like me panicking, crying, stressing, falling apart. None of the things helps the situation as much as actually there's an element of me wanting to do that. And I thought at the time, like, oh, it makes me so great in a crisis and a chaos, and I'm such a great like calming influence and a great mom. And I remember walking away like a couple of days later from the hospital thinking, actually maybe that I need to do some work, because actually maybe I should have been upset, maybe I should have been panicking, and maybe I should have. And it's trying to balance that, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think it's just because when you're facing adversity and it's all you know, it's just all you know. So it's not, you're not even phased
Must be
by it.
Tuesday. Oh, shit's hit the fan. The world's ending. Must be Tuesday.
Well, this is it. I think you just get so used to it. And a lot of my you know, friends and also clients, it's like that comes in quite a lot when things feel easy or peaceful. They're like looking for a problem, and I'm like, you need to get used to being that state of peace. You know, the fact that we feel so comfortable in chaos, that in itself is just not healthy, because you disassociate from the hardship. And I found that with myself telling my story, a lot of my childhood, or well, I guess not childhood, but as I got to sort of in my 20s and early 30s, I was telling my story without emotion. And I was like, wow, I'm telling people things, and they're like, you what? They did what? You got left where? You know, people are like telling me this, and I'm like, oh, it's just that was normal. I'd always got left at school. I weren't a thing, you know what I mean? And they're like, oh, so I think we do just disassociate from pain and hardship, but we shouldn't be in that. And I think that's where the inner child healing work comes in, doesn't it? Because it's like, okay, we need to reparent, we need to let our inner child be free. And then I think this is where this kind of, for me, comes into a mix, because I had to be a parent. Obviously, I was in my masculine energy. So then giving myself the permission to be held, receive love, give myself love, the love that I felt like I needed without having to perform, that was all kind of part of this process that I was pulling apart. And this came to a head in the pandemic, because then I couldn't go and live out my career as a professional dancer. And it forced me to have to do the inner work. And it was also my Saturn return. Everyone has a Saturn return in astrology. It's when your Saturn is in your chart and it goes in one sign for 29 years, 29 and a half years. So you can be affected between the ages of 27 to 32. Mine was that whole time span basically, but the peak of it was in the pandemic. And yeah, my whole life crumbled. Everything I thought I was fell to pieces. And to be honest, my whole life was in pieces. I was just gluing it back together again with like Gorilla Glue. That's basically what I did. My whole life was just Gorilla Glue. And then it finally got to pandemic and the Gorilla Glue wouldn't hold anymore. And then I realized I had to actually take out the pieces I wanted to keep, and then the rest I had to sweep away because it didn't serve me anymore. And that was a really hard process. But that's all of why I do this now, you know, as in why I mentor women through this process, is why I go into schools and do these workshops. Because I think if we were taught at a young age self-awareness and how to connect with our emotions in a better way, how to like manage our thoughts and feelings in a healthy manner and process them and feel them, embody them, and release out what doesn't serve us so we can bring in what does, I just feel like we would all live a more fulfilling life. And that's really, I've had to go through it the hard way. So doing this now is to make it easier for people and to hold their hands through the journey. I did it all on my own, and a lot of people are like mind blown by that. Again, that's my toxic masculine energy, because I didn't want to allow help. But through doing it on my own, I know lots of different routes and tools and variations to do it, because I had to suss it out for myself. And we're all different, right? There are going to be some people that want to do it on their own. There's going to be people that want lots of help. But yeah, I think by going first is always being the embodiment of this work and doing it, and why it's so important. Because as you said, we're always going to be in parts of our life where something comes up, something triggers again. We're never fully healed. But when you have a toolkit of things that you know work for you, ideas, you know, ways of moving to release emotions, feelings, thoughts, it's all of that. And that's how the dance plays in for my life as well, is that, you know, not only do I use like meditation, visualization and journaling, but also the dance is a massive part of that. Which I love, because I don't think there's anyone else really doing this formulation of like dance as well as all of these well-being, spiritual, deep practices. So I think it makes me unique. My friends always call me random names. Like I've been Mother Charissa because of my wise wisdom, but also Charisse Unique is another one, because I think I've always like worn things that are a bit outrageous or whatever, and it's like this idea that I'm just one of a kind, as we all are, you know. And that's kind of where my tagline on my journal is like, you are the only you there is, and that's your superpower. And it comes with self-acceptance, that, you know, and that is where I like to say, you know, self-worth plus self-acceptance is what self-love really is to me. And having that high self-worth is where your manifestations then will come. You can't really manifest anything with a low self-esteem, because you don't feel worthy of it. So that's really, in a nutshell, everything. Boom.
Yeah. It's that receiving element, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
100%. I'd love to circle back on that actually, about how you then apply that to manifestations, because that's essentially the kind of work that you do. That's the result, isn't it, that your clients come to you for. But one thing that, as you were just talking about, I was thinking, sometimes women can disconnect themselves from these types of this type of healing, because they're like, well, maybe my childhood wasn't that bad. Maybe I didn't really experience any trauma. And it's almost like, it's so sneaky, this work. Conditioning goes so deep that you don't even realize. Like, I remember thinking, well, the past is the past, doesn't help like revisiting any of that, just get on and crack on. And then it's like the cycles kept happening, but in different ways. Like, I obviously, you know, part of my story is that I built up like £1 million property portfolio with a partner who was a lot older than me, and so therefore I always felt inferior to him. Like, he was my savior. He got me out of a bad situation. I met him when I was young, and then when it came to splitting the assets, I didn't feel equal in that relationship. So I literally just took the bare minimum, even though I was the driving force of that empire. He never had any of that about him, because he'd had that typical 2.4 family upbringing that meant he didn't really have the resilience or foresight or desire or drive that I did. He's like just doing his little thing, and I'm working 3 jobs, like trying to make the same money just so I felt we were equal, but then ultimately walked away because I didn't feel worthy. And then equally attracting like narcissistic partners, even just that just literally ruined my life and my soul. But even as a mother, realizing that I'd kind of got toxic patterns of complete martyr mode when it comes to parenting, like forsaking all. And I actually remember, I think I've had postnatal depression with 2 of my daughters, and with my first baby, it was such a long battle with infertility that when we eventually did manage to get her, like thank God, I just went into a complete state of fear, because I think that whole journey of motherhood had really reminded me that you don't have any fucking power here. Like everything's outside of your control. You can't will this, you can't work it. There's nothing that you can do. It will either be or it won't be. And that was the ultimate lesson in surrender. And then having her here, it was like, I just was like, well, every minute. I then had to go back to work when she was 6 weeks old, which was a trauma in itself. But I remember looking at my partner, and it actually created such a wedge between us, because I was like, why do you not want to look at our baby every second of the day? I don't care if she's asleep, like just look at her, breathe near her. Like I need to be in this baby's energy like 24/7. And I remember literally like crying over a cot. We joke about it now, sometimes I tell my daughter this, and she's like, oh my God, you're so mortifying. And I was like, genuinely, like I used to just watch you sleep, and sometimes I still do. And she's like, no. But that work that I did not do on myself just kept representing itself like in different ways, whether it was through my kids, bad relationships, underselling myself, lowballing myself in business, attracting in narcissistic women, and all of the things. And it's like I was doing the personal development, I was reading the books, I was doing the affirmations, I was listening to the Tony Robbins YouTube videos, I was jogging on the treadmill full of all the energy, but I didn't do the fucking work. So all I kept getting was these artificial highs, and then it would all just crumble underneath me. And I've just connected a few dots in as we've been talking, which I just love. Like there's something about you, Charisse. You've just got this fucking wise soul energy that always just makes things make sense. But yeah, so that's the thing that I love about you, is that you don't let women build something on a foundation of crap, because it will just come back.
No, absolutely. No, thank you for sharing all that. And it is so important, you know, or everything that connects us. And I think that's really always, you know, whenever I go into my first session with a client, they always say to me, I haven't been through as much as you have. And then they'll tell me what they've been through. I'll be like, well, I mean, 1, we don't compare trauma. 2, I don't think people realize the extent of it, because when I say back to them about their wounds, you know, whether it's a mother wound, a father wound, whether it's, you know, disassociating parents or anxious attachment styles, you know, I could list lots of different variations of ways that they have lived their life not realizing that's what was happening to them. They're like, wow, I didn't even realize that. And 9 times out of 10, the issues you face now are 100% linked to the ones that you were in your childhood. And like you said, which I know from my own lived experience and seeing it in clients and friends and all of these things, is that if you do not address the problem, like you just said, it will continue to get worse and worse and worse. And it's like, you know, with this spirituality thing, the universe is constantly showing you, you know, for example, if your car breaks down or doesn't start, and you were going to go to see that partner, for example, and your car didn't start, and then you tried to call an Uber, but you couldn't get an Uber. It's like the universe is telling you, don't go and see that person, right? And if you still choose to go and see that person, and you turn up and maybe they are abusive or something horrible happens, it's like the universe was trying to pull you away, right? Now, this isn't your fault, and I don't want you to blame yourself on that, because we only know what we know. So when we're not aware and we don't have that self-awareness, we'll keep perpetuating these cycles because we're so clueless to what's happening. Whereas the moment you wake up and you're like, that's the second sign that this isn't right, maybe I don't do that. You know, maybe instead of actually going to see that person, it's like, you know, because they're sad or whatever, and I was going to be a martyr and go and help them, I'm actually going to take some time for me. Maybe today it means that I just, you know, watch a film and just do a bit of me time. And actually you find that that person comes to you the next day, they're in a better mood, and then actually the relationship does thrive. Or maybe you, in that time, you watch something in the film and it's like, I'm not going to let someone treat me like that. And then you're like, oh, wow, yeah, that's it. I'm not going to let someone treat myself. And then you end the relationship like that. You move on, you meet the man of your dreams. You know, it's like, this is the cycle of the
Being in
universe. Is,
communication, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Absolutely that. And I think we are so in our own way. You know, as I say, we're living so mindlessly, and we're in these cycles that we do not understand. And it only takes, you know, one person to say to you, why did you do that? And you're like, I don't know. I've always done it, or I always did that thing, or, you know, this is the way I've always been. This is another one that I get all the time. This is the way I've always been. Okay, how does that serve you? Are you happy for it? If you are, great, let's keep doing it. If you're not, something needs to change. Now, this isn't about blame and shame, as I said, it's about accountability. Because when we take accountability of our own actions, we can then see where we've added to that fire, you know. But with abuse and things like that, that it is completely the other person's fault. You are never to blame. But when it comes to maybe choosing partners that are having those narcissistic characteristics, things like that, there's an element of you in there that feels unworthy or feels like you deserve that. And that's the point that I would get you to see for yourself, and we would pull that apart to see where that self-awareness, that lack of self-esteem comes from. Because 9 times out of 10, you might have been neglected as a child. Now, neglect doesn't mean you wasn't fed. It just means that maybe you've got 5 siblings and love was shared out quite a lot, you know, or maybe
Yeah.
that you are, I wasn't meaning for you there.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Like, oh God,
no.
my kids would probably say that I'm too much, so we're good. I'm massively
No, but that's it.
overcompensating.
That's what I mean. Like you give so much, but as in, like, you know, like if you have like a father figure, for example, in that patriarchal standard, say for like your parents' age group, right? That they are one of these people that I'm talking about right now, is that they didn't realize they got low self-esteem because love was sparse, because actually dad was always working, and mum was always doing the chores, the housework. She was burnt out. Dad would come in, not show her any love, so then she had no love to give you. It's these
Yeah.
cycles that aren't your fault, but when you identify it, that's when you can work on rebuilding and creating a positive case study. Because I always say that we have a negative case study in terms of, and I don't really like using positive and negative, but for ways of explaining, you have built up reasons why you're not valid, why you're not loved, why you're not accepted, why you're not worthy, from what you've seen in your childhood, from your life experiences, from the partners you've chosen, from the friends that you have. So when we can identify what the pattern is, where it comes from, we can then start build up a positive case study that goes for you building self-trust in you. So for example, if you are someone that's unmotivated and you feel worthless for that, it means that you want to start creating a healthy lifestyle. So you set your alarm in the morning, and then you decide you're going to go for a walk first thing, listen to your podcast, and then make your breakfast. That is what you're going to do. So in order to be able to do that, you're going to set reminders in your phone. You're going to put your phone on the other side of the room. So that means you've got to get out of bed, go and get your phone and go straight out. Every time you choose to do that, you are showing yourself that I am worthy because I do what I say. And then you build self-trust. And it's all about these little baby steps that you do and you build, because then gradually those little things will then lead to big things. Maybe it's that you want a new job, so actually you go and fill in the application to get the job, whereas before you wouldn't have, because you were too scared, you didn't believe you were worthy enough. So it's like, this is how these points can build up to creating this case study to show you how worthy and validated you are. And that's where the manifestations come in. As we said, it's all about building this energy, this vibration, this like shift in who you are. And it's about the embodiment of being that. And it comes from understanding why you are the way you are, going back to then come forward again. Always there's an ebb and flow to life, and we'll always have it. You know, you always say another level, another devil. So you're always going to meet something at the level that you want to get to, but working through that each time, like healing circular. So each time it gets less and less and less, you get more powerful, more embodied, more stronger in your sense of self. You're limitless by the end of it.
Oh my God, I love that. I literally got chills at that, because it's so true, isn't it? And I guess we're still tribal beings at our very core. Like, we're still looking for the designated tribal leader or adult in the room. And when you are not looking, this, I think the saddest thing is when you don't recognize yourself as that authority, because you've let yourself down so many times and lost that trust. So as you said, it's those baby steps every day that essentially build up that own self authority, where you now become the bad bitch in the room that always knows what to do. And
Absolutely.
that's when you truly are like unstoppable. So if I was, or for anybody listening that are looking to, oh, and also Sharice, I have to say as well, you did a really beautiful moon ceremony last night as well. So what I really love about you, particularly as it relates to manifestation, is that you are literally, you could not be any more a walking, talking embodiment of the work that you share. And it's so holistic. It's nothing about you. It's generic, surface level. Oh, I read The Secret, so now I'm a manifestation coach. It's like, you literally like mastered your craft, you walk your walk, and you bring in so many spiritual elements as well that I just love to literally like sit at your feet and just hear you talk. So you did a beautiful new moon ceremony last night, which was just so powerful. So if I was somebody that was listening or wanting to come to you either to one of your ceremonies or just wanted to call in something right now, maybe I'm looking to manifest like 10k months, 20k months, new partner, a holiday or something else, what would you advise? Like, what would be your process to take somebody through that to really get what they want?
Okay, first of all, we'd have to look at why you want the thing to start off with. So why do you want it is a very beginning one, because if it's our ego that's attached to it, that's like a need for validation. So then the universe gets confused, because if it's not what your soul wants or what your soul requires, what's going to benefit you in a long run, 9 times out of 10, like, you might want to call in a partner, for example, but you want a partner maybe that's rich, for example. Say you want a rich partner, and then you call that partner in and actually they're narcissistic and abusive. So, the universe is showing you a reflection back of what you want because you wanted that. So I think what we need to do is get really clear on why we want these things and how it's going to make us feel, because that is really how the manifestation gets called in. And then, like I always said, we go back to go forward. So is it an ego point of view? Is it led from your childhood experiences? All of these things. And these are, that would be a long-term thing that we would do in, one of my programs, obviously the academy, or like one-to-one clients. This would be with the main thing. But if I was sitting with you on a moon workshop for an hour and a half, we would just look at, what do you want to let go of? So what do you need to let go of to make space for this manifestation to come in? So the 10k months, for example, if you know that you can have, say, for example, you've got like a service or something that can call in more money, for example, is your prices going to meet that? Because if you sell products that are £10, you would need to sell a lot of products at £10. That means a lot of work. So the exchange there isn't fair on you. So it's about being realistic in what it is you want. So
it's like the ladder of probability, isn't it?
Yeah,
like, if it's
that's
actually
it.
Like, we're all here for the quantum leaps and all the things and collapsing time, but equally, if it's like, girl, you haven't even sold one program, you're not going to send 10,000. Like,
No, that's
it's
it.
about
So,
that element as well, isn't it?
yeah, so that's where I would connect you to, like, your ego situation. Is that the reason why you want that thing to show other people, or is it because you know that this product will help so many people and it's actually about just getting it out further? Because 9 times out of 10, when we feel like our manifestation hasn't come in, we don't look at actually what has happened. So say you wanted 10k months, for example, but actually you ended up selling 10 products in that time. You've still made sales, and that's still something to celebrate. But we get so caught up on the big thing that we don't see the little wins, because actually those 10 customers that you sell to will sell to another 10, because then they'll tell people about it and they'll tell people. So you might not get a 10k month yet, but in the long run you are, and the universe is building you to that point. So there's
That
always a
illusion of
stepping
time,
stone.
isn't it? It's
Yeah.
everybody thinks it has to be now, and it's like, actually, you could still have achieved your 10k from in that place, but it's going to be paid back to you in time.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
also, like, that feeling of having your wish fulfilled, that is really what I'm all about. So, we clear away all of the limiting beliefs. That's what gets released, all of the things that don't serve us anymore. So I would clear away my feeling of not being worthy enough to have the thing. I would release the blocks that are keeping me stuck and stagnant. I would release my feeling of not being lovable. I release my feeling of having to work really hard. Like, these would be all the things that I would let go of and release out of my mind. And you can do that by, reaffirming positive affirmations. So, for example, if you've always felt unworthy, it would be like, I am so worthy of the life of my dreams, or I'm so loved. I'm a magnet for abundance. I'm a magnet for love. I'm a magnet for incredible opportunities. These can be things you start to embed, but you do have to believe them. So that's why I like to team these up with like positive things, like a visualization of like seeing your higher self and then using these affirmations, because it just, again, is this positive reinforcement. It's embedding this case study that you are worthy. And then it's about, connecting to the feeling. And that's what I'd always say, like, write down what it is you want. How does it feel to have that thing? Because this is what we're doing, is like, this is the quantum leap. It's stepping into that feeling of having it. You know, when you feel worthy enough and you can see it and feel it and taste it and be in it, it's already yours. You've already got it. There's a version of you that has it. And this is what, like, all manifestation comes down to, is if you can see it in your reality, it's already yours. And there's just, my friend said this and it was beautiful, and I shared this yesterday actually in the moon workshop, but it's like having a surprise party, because you are going to have this party regardless, right? It's your birthday. So either way, you're going to have a party, whether you're planning it or someone else is planning it. Ultimately, the party's happening. You don't have to worry about it. And actually, if you know that you're not planning the party, but someone else is for you, someone's got this party planned, you just don't know when it's going to happen, just get excited about it from now. You know, it's that lack gap that we get caught up in. And, you know, I'm human. I also get caught up in that lack gap. But ultimately, I know that what I want, the universe is bringing to me regardless, no matter how long it takes. And we get so caught up in that. And you can be specific with dates with manifestation, absolutely. But what I would say on that is that maybe the date doesn't happen when you want it to, because something better is coming. And it's always about holding on to that, knowing that, you know, if you think back to your life, this could be another task that you do before you even manifest. If you think back on your life where all of the setbacks that you felt happened, but what was the outcome of it in the end? You know, actually all of those things that were hard, what was the end byproduct of that all being hard? Because if it means that, you know, for example, with fertility, if you're like, you've been trying and then actually you stop trying, and that's when you had the baby, maybe it was that
That's
you're
it.
putting so much
And
force
that's
in it.
exactly what happened, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'd obviously tried for like 5 years with my past partner. Obviously, we then split up. So that was obviously why it didn't happen with him. With my new partner, it was lots of like different medical nuances that brought a whole load of his stuff to my stuff that was like, just made it even more ridiculous. And we were waiting for our IVF appointment. And the doctor literally said, like, you know, once we undergo this is going to be brutal. So you need to like go, you're young, go have a nice holiday. And we literally went to Asia, and we traveled around Asia. And I always joke that my daughter was actually conceived in Hong Kong on Chinese New Year, which I think was really beautiful. So I always joke with her that she's made in China. She's like but it was just so beautiful. So obviously then when I then went back to the appointment with the specialist, I was like, don't need to worry, like already happened.
Oh, I love that.
I think it's like you're saying in that surrender piece, in that it's like the surprise party. I knew it was going to happen. The pressure had been like let off. It wasn't going to happen naturally, but it was going to happen in some way or another. And I've kind of made peace that the universe doesn't work on my timescales. And what I thought, you know, how I thought it should play out. But ultimately what then happened was, you know, something even better, because it was just the most beautiful pregnancy. You know, it was just such a beautiful experience. And even though we didn't end up together, like I'm always so grateful for that time that we had together. Like he was really that dad that was like, every little thing. It was lovely, bless him.
Oh, and that's so nice. I got chills when you told me that, because I think it's like always nice to hear that, you know, when I know this theory works and I've seen it in my own life. So then when you hear other people's examples of it, it's so deeper and richer, because you're like, yeah, this is it. This is why we teach it. This is why we speak about it, because this really is the example of it. And I think when there's the aligned action is when your soul moves forward and you do something, for example, like going on that holiday, enjoying yourself. It was like you needed to have that break, but the aligned action was the fact that you were still having fun and enjoying yourself. Whereas the force would be, you know, keep trying, keep pushing. And that's when it doesn't become fun.
Yeah, it was really like mechanical by the end of it. It was hilarious. But I remember, like, it was definitely that false energy that you mentioned as well, that toxic masculinity, where it was like, I fucking deserve this. Like, I've never asked the universe for anything in my whole fucking life. I've always had to work hard for everything. This is the one thing that I deserve more than most, that I'm going to love this baby so bloody much. Like, you give me my baby. You give me my fucking baby, universe. It was like that constant push energy. And then when I finally got that validation, like, it's going to happen, like, cool, like, chill your beans, like, it's going to happen. let's now surrender and enjoy it.
And
So
also,
yeah,
I was
sorry.
going to say on that, I've cut you off. Is like when you are in that mindset of forcing it,
Yeah.
would you have been as good of a mum? Like when you
Yeah.
are over mollycoddling, that you would have been so, because you forced this baby to come, you would have been so forceful of like, don't touch her, don't speak to her.
Yeah.
Like, whereas
Yeah.
actually when you've had her in a relaxed state, you're calm, you're in
Yeah.
your feminine energy, it's like you are giving that love from a place of pure intention rather than force, rather than resentment. It's like, you know, that resentment of you forcing to have that baby so much, and she finally came and now she's here. It's like, I've got to love her, you've got to love her, everyone's got to love her. And not even that, it's like, you know, she's got to be fed at 7 o'clock every single night without fail. You know, like we all know, like
Yeah.
parents that are in that, which there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not a parent, so I'm not judging anyone's parents in there, by the way. It's just
Yeah.
more about the fact that if you had her from that place of force, her upbringing would have been very different than her
Yeah.
being in a place of peace and love and appreciation, you know, that
And
nurturing.
I think it was quite a healing journey for me as well, because in me wanting to like, and this is the thing with IVF, like it's just such a beautiful, incredible gift that we can do that, and that we can help women that were always destined to be mothers. Like, I've got so much gratitude for that. And you know, if that was my journey, I would have absolutely celebrated that, and you know, just been so grateful. But equally, it was like, in me leaning back, it really allowed my body to show
Yeah.
me what I was capable of. And I think that was the start of my spiritual awakening, in that
Oh, I
it was
love
like,
that.
wow, actually, it's just kind of done its own thing anyway, despite all of my toxic, like, conscious thoughts, and all of the things that I like, the stress hormones and all of the things around it. Like, my poor little body in the background is still like, I'm just trying to nurture some life over here. If you could just like ease up, that would
Yeah.
be amazing. Like, that just showed, like, it really restored my faith in just kind of like what I'm actually capable of. That even,
Yeah.
because I didn't know for ages that I was pregnant, because obviously I wasn't I didn't realize it. I didn't connect the dots on the symptoms. I'd been told it would never happen. So it was just me like thinking I'm being erratic and maybe I'm a bit poorly. And so I didn't find out for a few kind of weeks until I was actually pregnant. And then I actually, because I didn't even dare to do the test, because I was like so fucking downtrodden. And I was like, well, until we get that appointment, that I didn't even dare to hope, dream, maybe, or anything. And then when I did, I was like, wow, I've been such a mean bitch to myself for like so many years. And I was the same with you, always the fat one, always like just never really had gratitude for my body or any of the things that I was capable of. It was all like, if I don't outwork everybody, then I won't get it. Like, and I just was really in that everything's got to be hard mindset. When I then leaned back and thought, wow, my body's just been doing its own damn thing in the background, beautifully nurturing this poor little baby that's probably like, I don't know, like deep fat fried in the amount of stress that I've had going on in the meantime. Like, wow, actually, maybe that, like, there are forces out there that are trying to support me and trying to give me what I want, and maybe the universe has got my back, and maybe there isn't. Like, it just really sent me on like a rabbit hole, I think, with her.
Yeah, and that was really and truly, that's the art of detachment, because when you want something so much, you put everything into it, you're so attached to the outcome. Whereas the moment that you thought, okay, we're going to go away and we're going to come back and then we'll sort this out, you were so detached from the outcome that had chance to flow in. And that's the same
Yeah.
with our manifestations. Like I always say, it's like that blocked drain pipe. It's like all of our things that hinder us and keep us blocked. When actually, when we release everything out, we let go of like all the old belief systems, like you said, the feeling of it being hard, the feeling not being good enough, all of those things go, we release it, we make space for the manifestation to come up. Like the seed in the dark gets a chance to finally bloom and blossom on its own. Ultimately, the flower is always going to grow, right? You just got to let it. You can't keep checking it every day. You can't keep adding more water because you're just going to drown it. You know, you can't put it in the sun too much because it will burn out. It's like, has to have the right requirements, and that requires you to leave it and let it grow on its own terms. And your manifestation is exactly the same.
Oh, I just love that. That was so beautiful, and it's so true, isn't it? And it's sad in this day and time where it's such a hustle culture, where everybody wants everything yesterday. That actually, what I love about your approach to manifestation is it's building everything on a solid foundation, so that whatever comes through for you next is just going to lead to like better and better and better incredible things, because you're eliminating all of that cycle of like push energy, get what you want, and then you lose it, and it's all about like very aligned to me how I grow businesses. It's like the sustainable, stackable like wins and success, and the solid foundation.
I always like to say, you know, like when I said about that flower analogy, it's like we have to first de-weed, and we have to re-put the soil in. You know, you can't grow a new flower on old soil. If anyone does gardening, they know. I mean, I don't do gardening. I just have a very basic idea from, you know, years ago, but I know that you couldn't plant a bed of roses on old soil. So that's what my work is digging up the old weeds, getting away all of the things that don't serve us anymore. So then every time you plant a seed, it's going to grow 100% because we've done the work.
Yeah. Oh, I just love that. Thank you so much. That feels like a really beautiful place to like just kind of wrap up the episode today. But just honestly, thank you. You've got such, and it's so interesting because you are so much younger than me, but you have that old soul that just has so much wisdom and beauty in everything that you say, and you connect the dots in such thoughtful ways that is way beyond your years and all the things. But for anybody that obviously wants to reconnect with you after this episode, and I genuinely believe that every woman should gift themselves some time with you, because like you say, you cannot like grow anything beautiful on this old soil that needs that opportunity to just bring it all up. So you've obviously got your fantastic new academy, which I'm super excited about. It's going to be launching soon.
Yeah, definitely. So that's exciting. Like that is literally just brand new, and that's going to be super affordable, like 12 months, 6 months, and it will just be £47 a month, or you can pay in full. And with that, you'll get access to the moon workshops, my events, and all of these things. But it's these close containers with other women, and that's really the work obviously you're so passionate about too, is that I did my healing journey on my own, and it was difficult and hard, and I don't recommend that to anyone. So it's about creating this space for us all to connect. And also I'll be doing like live sessions in there as well, so if you want to actually ask me questions, or you know, we can unpack things together, that will be in there to like that monthly calls, also that connection. So then that's an offer. And then for the women that are looking for that individual support, you know, if there is something in your life that's been holding you back for a long time, those patterns and cycles, my one-to-one containers are available. And I've actually now chosen to do 6-month container with my one-to-one clients, just because I'm really dedicated to getting that outcome for people for longevity and really clearing the way. And yeah, I've got a couple of events coming up as well this year, which is really exciting. So if you want to follow me on social media, my name was obviously at Sharice_Bidram on Instagram, or drop me a message. You can
Or your
go through my
YouTube
website.
as well. You've got lots of
YouTube,
incredible resources on there as well, which I love as well. Like you did like a activation last night that was just so beautiful, and genuinely. So if anybody is listening and loves needs more Sharice in their life, they absolutely will do. Everybody does. Then you can find her at her YouTube or her Instagram channels, and I will make sure that all the details are popped into the show notes. But thank you so much for just joining us today and spreading your light and being an oracle as always. Just, you know, kind of giving me so much faith in humanity and all the things. And yeah, I have no doubt we will catch up soon.